In March 2011, Devon Wildlife Trust released a pair of beavers into a fenced enclosure in the headwaters of the River Tamar in West Devon. The privately owned county wildlife site was chosen because the calm grassland rich in wildflower species, was becoming rapidly encroached by willow and birch scrub, and DWT was looking for a more natural way to open it out and keep the scrub at bay. A 900-metre fence was constructed with funding from Viridor and the Trull Foundation.
When we first put the beavers into this enclosure in 2011, none of us had any idea where it was ultimately going to lead. We just had the news in August from DEFRA that the river otter beavers are allowed to stay, and that marks the first reintroduction of a mammal back into the English landscape, which is an incredibly significant moment. But this is where it all started, and in 2011 we put them into this lodge, which is just behind me, and very quickly the beavers started building canals and dams and really re-engineered this whole site. Not only did they start coppicing trees, but they built a sequence of 13 dams and ponds along this 200-metre length of stream, and a huge range of other species then came in as a result. That's why we call them a keystone species, because of the benefits they have for other species. And common frogs was one of the species that we looked at right from the start. We counted clumps of frog spawn every year, and we had 10 clumps of frog spawn right at the start, but by 2017 we were up to 681 clumps. And obviously frogs are at the bottom of the food chain, so that benefits a whole range of other things like grass snakes and herons that came in to feed on the frogs. And this was all because of the life-giving force that the beavers have.
Every winter, a team from Southwest Archaeology mapped the changes to the watercourse as the beavers built canals and constructed their dams, shown here with black lines. Over time, as the beavers build more and more dams and dig canals along the line of the old watercourse and laterally away from the watercourse, they created a highly complex wetland corridor.
The relationship with Richard Brazier's research group at the University of Exeter has also been really interesting on this site. In 2013 we had funding from Westland Countryside Stewards to allow the university to install these Vnotches at the top and the bottom of the site, and these have allowed us to look at how the water flow changes as the peak flows move through the sequence of beaver dams. And they showed really effectively that the speed of flow is reduced and the peak flows are lower coming out the bottom of the site. And when all that was published in the academic literature, following the research work that was done here and elsewhere, it really did help to demonstrate that beavers could have a really important role in natural flood management in the face of our increasing flood risks.
Things progressed dramatically in 2014 when a few beavers living wild on the River Otter were shown to be breeding, and the government proposed to trap and remove them. Following a campaign by local residents and others, DWT proposed a compromise. We would run a 5-year trial with the main landowners on the River Otter, Clinton Devon Estates, the team of researchers at University of Exeter, who we already had a close relationship with, and beaver expert Derek Gow, the owner of our West Devon beavers. With the expertise and understanding of beavers gained through the Enclosed project, we were well placed to run the trial, and to the amazement of many of us, the government granted us the licence we needed to run the 5-year trial. The beavers had a reprieve for 5 years at least. But it wasn't quite over for the beavers. One of the conditions set at the start of the trial was that the beavers had to be proven to be healthy. And so, in February 2015, the government vets from the Animal and Plant Health Agency trapped the 2 adult pairs and one of the young kits and brought them into captivity. They were then given a barrage of tests, including internal laparoscopic examination, before being declared fit and healthy. The beavers were then released back into their 2 territories. The whole process was followed by the team from BBC Springwatch and presenter Martin Hughes Games, who was rewarded with a tail slap as he tried to stroke a beaver exiting its transport crate.
On the River Otter, there was a huge amount of interest in the beavers and what they were doing, and because they were wearing ear tags, it did allow us to see where some of the main animals were living, and people were reporting the sightings to us. But actually a much more accurate way of understanding how the beavers were colonising the catchment was to use field signs, and this is exactly the sort of thing that we were mapping. So this is a willow tree that the beavers have been feeding on here, and by mapping where all these feeding signs are, we can produce these heat maps which show where the territories are. And at the beginning of the trial we had 2 main territories down in the lower part of the River Otter. And gradually over time those territories expanded to include pretty much the whole catchment. One of the most interesting ones was we had a 1-year-old beaver kit which was tagged down at Otterton, and she was found right up at Otterhead Lakes, which is a journey of about 50 kilometres, and she had then set up a territory up there, and there's now quite an active breeding family group up there. So at the beginning of the trial we were 2 family groups living in 2 territories. By the end of the trial we're probably up to about 15 territories, and we know that at least 7 of those territories have got breeding families in them.
Beavers sometimes build dams in drainage ditches, and so can impact on farmland and other land users. One of the most important aspects of the trial has been the intensive support for landowners provided by project staff. Jake Chance is the field officer who has been employed on the River Otter to support the local community.
My role is to support landowners in the River Otter catchment and to get them used to living with beavers again. Beavers have been away from England for the last 400 years, and sometimes it's a bit of a surprise for landowners when beavers turn up on their stream and start to build dams or feed on some of their trees. Over the 5-year trial I've worked very closely with landowners, including Clinton Devon Estates, who have been hugely supportive of the beaver work that Devon Wildlife Trust have been leading on. Without Clinton Devon Estates support, it would be fair to say that the trial wouldn't have been the success it has been. My day-to-day role when I visit landowners is to make sure they're educated on beaver behaviour and the benefits that beavers can deliver to society. So they can create more resilient flooding landscapes, they can create biodiversity, all the things that Professor Richard Brazier and his team have been looking into. I also make sure that landowners are happy with what the beavers are doing and can work to mitigate problems. So we do fence trees like this, but we also install flow devices and monitor the height of beaver dams. Flow devices are structures that take water from the high side of a beaver dam and allow it to move through the beaver dam without the beavers realising. That means that landowners can control the water height rather than beavers. When you do release beavers back into landscapes, they will create localised impacts, and it's really important that the government puts in place measures to reward landowners and farmers for having beavers back on their land. Ideally in the headwaters, where beavers can deliver benefits to flooding and create huge beneficial environments for biodiversity.
It's been a real privilege to be working alongside beavers and their reintroduction for the last 5 or so years, and these animals have unrivaled capacity to breathe new life into our waterways. And it's been a huge privilege to work with Devon Wildlife Trust with the support of its members, and having the courage and conviction to work with a species that can do so much for our waterways. They revitalise our watercourses, but with them brings specific challenges, and they're quite difficult to overcome. But the success of this project has been down to the partnerships that we've forged, the links with communities and all those that live and work and love the river. So we're looking forward to a future where beavers are widespread across the River Otter and beyond. One of the other keys to success of this project, and what has influenced government so strongly, has been the final report that was led by the University of Exeter. And this is a tremendous piece of work which we're all fed into as a partnership between ourselves, Clinton Devon Estates, Derek Dowell Consultancy, and it's this science and evidence which has helped make what has been one of the most groundbreaking decisions in conservation history for over a generation.